Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this very important panel with some amazing people. So before we start, Brandon and I want to introduce you to everyone. So Brandon, take it away.
Yes, absolutely. So hello, welcome again. I'm Brandon. I'm gonna start with introducing Bree. So Brianna Reed is an 18-year-old actress, filmmaker, poet, and mental health advocate. She has been acting on screen since the age of 12, but also has experience screenwriting and directing. Additionally, in the summer of 2019, Brianna created an overnight mental health conference held at CSUN that connects teenage girls with mental health resources. Most recently, she self-published her first poetry anthology called Call Me When You Get This, which is centered around her experience with recovery and mental illness. When Brianna is not writing or filming, she is most likely playing guitar, attending a punk show in LA, or still weeping over a book she read last week. Same. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next, we have Christopher Smith. He's the program director for the Entertainment Community Fund's Looking Ahead program for professional young performers. He is a licensed social worker who is an expert in youth mental health for child actors. For the last 8 years, Chris has offered individual and family counseling supporting youth in entertainment and is passionate about teen suicide prevention. Working closely with youth in entertainment and collaborating with various production companies to support on-set safety and support, Chris offers a unique and specialized perspective on youth mental health.
Yes. And then we have Blair Imani is the creator of the viral web series Smarter in Seconds. She is the LA Times bestselling author of Read This to Get Smarter and head of education at Feminists for All. She is also the author of Making Our Way Home and Modern History. Her scholarship spans intersectionality, gender studies, race and racism, sociology, and United States history. As a public speaker, Blair Imani has presented at universities including Oxford and Harvard. She serves on the board of directors for the Tegan and Sara Foundation. The New York Times praises Blair Imani's unique ability to create progressive lessons with vibrant visuals and a perky, quirky delivery. Her work centers women and girls, global Black communities, and the LGBTQ+ community. As an educator, influencer, and semi-retired organizer, Blair Imani is dedicated to making the world less terrible and amplifying the voices and work of those fighting the good fight.
Yay. Next, we have Shane Griffin as the manager of strategic initiatives. Shane spent many years exploring how influencers and SAG-AFTRA intersect and was instrumental in the development of the influencer agreement, which she now also administers. She comes to this work with a real passion for how talent are engaging and navigating new and emerging social platforms and building sustainable careers. Shane brings to her work experience in labor organizing, community organizing, and business affairs, and she's great. So welcome, Shane.
And then we have Suli Guzman, who is known across her channels as @SuliG_, and she is a digital content creator using beauty, wellness, and travel content to empower women worldwide to live boldly and embrace who they are at every stage of life. As a partner to brands like Garnier, Foot Locker, WeTV, Smile Direct Club, and more, Suli's creative, authentic, and high-quality content has allowed her to grow a loyal community. With field experience in UX design, program management, and a bachelor's in psychology and business, Suli's unique skill set has allowed her to connect with individuals from all walks of life. She champions cultivating a safe space on social media and advocates knowing when to take a digital detox to safeguard your mental health. Suli is dedicated to building a professional value through education and is a member of the American Influencer Council. So welcome as well.
Yes. Yay. And then also we need to introduce ourselves, Brandon.
No, that's a great idea. Yeah.
I'm Jillian Clare. I am an actress and director. I started acting when I was 7 years old, and I've been a SAG-AFTRA member since I was 8. Brandon and I are the co-chairs of the Los Angeles Young Performers Committee, and he's the best partner. And we're so excited to be working with Looking Ahead on these amazing panels. So yeah, thank you. Brandon?
Yeah, hi, my name is Brandon Sievers. As Jillian was saying, we are co-chairs on the Los Angeles Young Performers Committee. I've been a member of SAG, I want to say, for like 6-7 years now. I started acting when I was 8, so that was about 10 years ago. I've been a member of Looking Ahead for about 5 years now, I want to say, as well. And I'll do a brief rundown on Looking Ahead as well. But I couldn't be more excited into delving into this panel series with this great team. With Looking Ahead, so I'll explain that now. Looking Ahead is an organization that services young performers ages 9 to 18. Their mission is to give young performers a safe space to be their true, authentic selves in a non-judgmental environment where they can connect with their peers, learn valuable life skills, and grow in a healthy way. They offer dozens of events, workshops, and resources each year to help you balance your school and work life with their family and social life. And the best part of it all is that it's free. It doesn't come at a cost to any of the young performers who take access of this wonderful resource. Yeah.
Whew. Okay,
Right.
and then before we move on,
Yes.
thank you to V and Natalie for being on here too. They're also from Looking Ahead, and they have been great supporters in all of this and working so hard for us to be able to do everything that we're doing here. So thank you both.
Yes.
Okay, now that we've done that,
Sure.
let's start this thing. So, we really want to talk about social media and how it affects mental health with young performers. So let's just start with this first question, which is for all of you. Please just, say what you will. So the first thing that we'd like to know is, what do the followers really mean to you, and what are the things people don't know about having a large social media presence?
I can start. So
Yeah.
for me, and I'll also say for we at the American Influencer Council, believe that having a following represents community. It's a reflection of people who think like you, who look like you, or who aspire to do what it is that you're doing. And you are showing up for them in the world the way that you choose to, whether it's through singing, whether it's through tutorials, whether it's through baking, whatever it is, it's community. And I don't know if for the second question, you want us to go first, if you want us to tie it in together.
You can tie it in however you want to tie it in, and everyone else can jump in.
Sure. Okay. So I think that some of the pressures that we don't think about when we initially begin, or maybe pressures that other people don't think about, is the fact that when you are showing up in a social setting, or when you're showing up as talent, you are reflecting your community. So at first, as it begins as something you want to do, something that you love, but then essentially as you grow your community, you reflect them. And sometimes that can come with a bit of pressure and amongst other things. But I think ultimately your you ends up becoming a we in the way that you operate, in the way that you speak, and in the way that you show up places.
Mm-hmm. It's great. Yeah.
I'll just jump in if I may. Having worked with talent who have a social media presence, whether they're making it a full-time career or something they're doing in tandem with other areas of professional development, it's a lot of work, right? It looks really polished and beautiful when it goes on screen and we're scrolling through and enjoying the content, but the amount of thought and curation and attention to detail that creators put into their content, I think needs to be respected and applauded, right? It's not necessarily just something that happens in 2 minutes. So I say respect the craft.
100%. Blair, Bree, what do you guys think about having these large social media presences, and how do you balance, not taking that as like a, value of your life? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but there's a lot of me on social media that I don't show. Like a majority of my life is not on social media. So what I'm projecting to my audience is only like a fraction of who I am or what I do. So we put it amazing. It is a community, and it is a safe place for me to share my art and connect with other artists and connect with people. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, it's like something that's there, and I go and I share my art, and then I leave. And it's like there's so much of people that you don't see on their social media and what they're choosing to share.
100% to that, Brianna. I think that especially when it comes to TikTok, I'm in like Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I don't get fined, because TikTok is such part of the game. Like I really, look at me quoting football. But anyway, like being on there is literally just because it has to be part of my social media game plan. But I think that it doesn't give you the full a glimpse into somebody's life. Like, even though what I do show on, of myself is curated, and I always talk about, you know, intentional vulnerability, where you need to make sure that people aren't putting you on a pedestal, because it can happen so fast. I went viral in 2020 for running my mouth talking about racism, but there was that increased interest in 2020 when people were posting the black squares, drowning out all of the really important information about Black Lives Matter. And I just started running my mouth being like, hey, like, why would we be doing this? Let's take a step back. Let's think critically. And it softened me a lot in the way that I approach things. I try to be, you know, even in what you're reading, Brandon, my bio, trying to make the world less terrible. Not, you know, a better place, but just less terrible, and doing that harm reduction. On TikTok, people don't get to see that full view into my life. So because I clone myself in my video Smarter in Seconds, a lot of people on TikTok thought that I was a twin, because they see two of me all the time, because they're not seeing my full life story. They're not able to, like, you know, go look at pictures of my dogs and see, you know, my full family life. They're just kind of like consuming content from me. And then on Instagram, I feel like you have a broader picture. Twitter has its own uses. But as far as my community goes, I call them Smarties, because I think that even the term follower has this weird hierarchy and built into it. And this is something that I think a lot of like educators and creators, and you all have touched on already, is trying to make that a communal, not just the me, but the we, like you were saying, Suli, like making sure that it feels communal, it doesn't feel hierarchical, and that nobody's putting me on a pedestal. And anytime somebody does, I'm always like, hey, get me down off that pedestal. I'm afraid of heights, because we're not doing it. Because as soon as they put you up high, then you can fall. And I do feel the need to like explain to people why I'm doing something or I'm making a decision, because I want to preempt any additional questions that might, you know, take away from my experience. Like, oh, I didn't wear hijab during my wedding. Why? Not because I owe them that, but because, you know, they're part of my life as much as I'm a part of theirs. And I also get to decide how much I tell and how much I don't, which is why after my wedding, I was like, here's a list of questions you shouldn't ask. When are you having kids? Wow, what an inappropriate question. Stop asking that immediately. Next question. So we can be fun, we can be playful, but we can still set boundaries and give as much of ourselves as we want, like you were saying, Brianna.
That was great. Absolutely. Really quick, I want to touch on something before we go on to the next question. We talk a bit about safe spaces. What can you do and what do you do to ensure that that safe space continues to be a space of safety?
I could go really quickly on that. I think the most terrifying thing that happened to me after I went viral was seeing somebody like in a club setting where they came up to me and they just screamed my name at me and then they walked away. Because while it's a blessing to be that impactful in somebody's life, you wouldn't just scream at somebody that you knew in your life and in your own context unless you had put them on this like other plane. And so what that taught me was, okay, let's take a step back. My husband's background is in performance studies. So what aspect of performance that I'm doing outwardly is getting that response back? And it's really about curating other people's experience of you. So if I'm giving them flawless filters, edited all the time, and I'm not giving them like, I just woke up selfie, not I did my makeup lightly and then got back in bed and took a selfie, but like literally just like vulnerable outtakes, bloopers. I'm a whole person. I put my, you know, shoes on 1 foot at a time, like that type of lens. Then people are going to build up in their minds this false version of you. And it's not your fault. It's just about being cognizant of that and taking a step back. So now when I meet people in public, they're very respectful. And it's about having that safety mechanism around you, never posting your location of where you are until you leave. It's all those little steps in between. And then add that extra layer of making sure you're curating other people's experiences of you, setting those boundaries. Even when people ask me questions, like you can go to blairimani.com/FAQ and see all these frequently asked questions. I'm also letting people know like, hey, I actually don't owe you this information, but as an educator, I'm providing it to you. And yeah, you might think it's mean that I'm saying I don't owe you this, but that's because we live in a patriarchy and in a sexist society where you expect this information from women. So we're learning and we're undoing and we're learning and we're setting boundaries, and it's all fun. And doing that in a way where it gives space for other people to set those small boundaries in their lives, I think that's something that's so important. And I know the American Influencer Council does so much around that, helping to coach influencers on how to stay safe with their fans and their communities.
Great, lovely. No, please. I saw. Were you going to say something?
Yeah. Exactly what Blair said. Ever since I was little, and I thought it had something to do with the fact that I was a child on social media, that I couldn't post my location until I was gone. But really, I mean, it carries as an adult person who is in the public eye, I mean, you have to look out for those things. There are also a lot of features on social media that I take advantage of frequently, such as untagging myself from posts that I don't want to be tagged in, deleting comments that I don't feel are appropriate. And also for myself, I'm very transparent about what I believe in and what I tolerate on my page. So at the end of the day, you know, my community is kind of, it regulates itself, and it's gotten to a point where it's like self-sustaining, and like I'll see a comment and before I can even get to delete it, there's like 8 people under it being like, who are you and why are you here? And you are not welcome here unless you are like us. And it's like, I started like a book club too during quarantine, and now it has over like 250 members, and I haven't been on there in months, but I go in and they're doing their own, they're creating their own projects. They were like, girl, I popped in like one time, they're like, we do not care, we are already on the next event, please keep up. Like, so I feel like once you, as the influencer, as the person in the public eye, as long as you set those standards and those boundaries, your audience will follow, and it kind of does the work for you sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I second what both of those ladies said. I mean, I think setting the expectation is very important. As much as I love beauty and doing my hair, like I also like showing up with no makeup on and half my hair up and half my hair down when I first wake up. Like that's just the reality of my day to day. So I think setting the expectation of who you are naturally, so that not only is it a safe space, but also you feel comfortable enough to show up. Like I know sometimes people feel like if I don't have makeup on, if I don't have my hair done, I can't create content because I'm not ready. And it's like, this is the expectation that we set. So we have to come forward and we have to say, hey, this is how I look. This is how I am on a normal basis. And people will respect it that same way. I also think that making our platforms and just social media a safe space for others, for the consumer, includes promoting and creating positive content, creating wellness. I'm so big on wellness, and just like putting polls up, like take what you need today, take energy, take positivity, whatever it is that you need. Because I think that as creators, we have to set that expectation and put that out there so that people can be in a positive space and say, hey, I follow her because she's a positive corner of social media.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. The next question. Oh, did anyone else want to touch on that before I moved on? Okay, great. The next question that I had was, how do you give yourself permission to take a break? Because we've talked about taking breaks and taking detoxes to back away and to just keep yourself sane. How do you give yourself?
Claire is automatically like, I don't.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, it's hilarious because as much as I preach, take time for rest, take time for relaxation, I'll even post something where I'm like, hey, if you did nothing today, that's absolutely fine. And then my assistant will DM me and be like, girl, you've been writing emails the entire day. What kind of hypocritical nonsense is this? I did a lesson at the beginning of the year on hustle culture and how even if we overexert ourselves and do extra work, we actually make ourselves less effective. And so I know all the science, but I would love to hear from the rest of y'all because I have no clue.
Well, I can say I had to learn the hard way. Like in 2020, I just saw like a huge opportunity. Everyone was on the internet. Everyone was locked in on social media. And I was like, let me just go, go, go. And I quickly burned out. And I taught myself through that experience that like, you have to schedule breaks. Like at this point, it is what it is. And I don't know why as creators, sometimes we feel guilty about that, because if you think about large conferences that have like this whole schedule, they schedule time for breaks. When you think about Fortune 500 companies or your organizations, breaks are the mandate. And I'm so grateful to AIC because they really help you look at, from a creative perspective, they help you look at your account as a business, as your platform as a business. I think when you're on social media, it's so easy to just think that this is personal and this is just creativity, but it's also a business. And for businesses to operate, you need breaks. And so for me, it was a personal experience. After that experience, I was like, oh, absolutely. That's why I started traveling. And then recently I just put my phone down on the weekends because I just feel like in order for me to feel refreshed and inspired, I need to take a step back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to hop in here too. And for me, I think it's so much about knowing what our saturation point is. What is our point that we're like, okay, I'm underwater, and knowing it before we get up to here. How do we know it right here? And does that show up in like we're getting short with people, or we're just really frustrated, or we're just endlessly scrolling and not really taking in even what we're seeing? So for me, I will preach truly till the cows come home about understanding what's going on with us, understanding our emotions, and really being able to connect to our emotions. So really being able to understand like, okay, I am a bit overwhelmed here, and I do need to step back and just pull away. There's nothing wrong with taking a break. And actually, like, as we were just saying, as Suli was saying, it's healthy. It's healthy. So we can stop. And I think that kind of leads me to think of what do we owe people? If we have a community, if we have a following, like, can we still be ourselves? Can we still honor ourselves in our own mental health? And that can actually serve as a model for people. The more that we say, okay, I'm going to stop and take care of myself, that gives people the permission to do the same.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
I just want to jump on that. I've been learning in recent times where this point is and not up here, but much like Suli, I had to learn the hard way. And it got to a point where I was actively in crisis for me to take a break. And I don't think you should be at a point of, I don't think it should ever get to that point, as Chris was saying. And it was kind of, I wouldn't have taken a break if I wasn't forced to. It was during quarantine, the pandemic, when everyone was kind of chronically online. I was also going through my mental health journey, and I ended up going to treatment for a few months, and they take your phone from you. So it really was like no choice. But I, was like, okay, I might as well, if this is, part of the process, I trust it. And I found out that once I got out, I was like, I don't need this, it sort of showed me that I don't need it to function in everyday life. And that was something that I had never experimented with before. I had never known what it would be like if I had just put my phone down. And that I don't have to reach a point of crisis to identify when I need to take a break. And now no one has to force me to do it.
That's so important. I mean, it's amazing that you've been able to discover that level within yourself, and sounds, Suli, like you have as well, which is incredible. Shane, I'm wondering, is this something that ever comes up with you? You're on the business side of social media. Do you hear this from young performers or from other performers that they just can't do any more brand deals, they can't do anything else, they've reached their limit?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, I think a lot of what I've heard over the years is, coming to the work from a place of joy sometimes evolves into trying to chase the engagement, trying to chase the brand deals, trying to chase the algorithms, and that's exhausting. And I think what a lot of creators have found to recenter themselves is, hey, I need to realign with that place of joy that brought me to this work to begin with, because that's when I'm creating my best content and I'm living my best life, and I'm not just, drowning in all the other noise. And so I think that's been the consistent message I've found to be really, truly just successful for folks in charging forward in making this really a sustainable career, because this is the Wild West, right? This kind of work, you guys are you're paving the way forward for everyone. And it's exciting, but it's also very daunting. And so coming to it from joy, and then the brand deals, that's a whole other thing we can unpack. I won't even go there yet. But I think the joy, the authenticity, just that has to lead all the time. But I'm also not a creator, so.
Well, that made me think, Shane, one thing when it comes to the brand deals is that I think that the companies and the brands, they are hiring you. And I think this is something that sometimes like young influencers, performers, educators, whoever it may be, forget because we're so keen on getting that check because yeah, we need to fund the work. It's expensive out here in these streets. It's the Wild West, but rent is high, you know? And so we can't just be staking a claim. Like, and so I think that what I learned is giving that pushback and like having that strong relationship with whoever represents you, or if you're dealing with the brands directly, to really be like, no, I need space, I need time. And not feeling like you have to over justify yourself because like you were saying, Suli, like if it's a business, then yeah, businesses have like allowance for 6 days. So I'm really keen on that. It doesn't always work. Like I have a bunch of stuff I'm doing before the elections. I was on my honeymoon and I was getting so many emails and I had my out of office on and I still had to respond to emails. So it doesn't always work out, but that way, you know, for the future, like, is this brand opportunity worth my time? Is the cost benefit analysis coming out where I'm on, you know, coming out on top, but still remembering that you're in that position of power where, yeah, they've already sought you out. So how do you move forward in that place of power to set those boundaries, not just with your community, but with essentially the people that are employing you and hiring you as talent?
So good. And I want to share a stat since we're talking about this burnout. I have it next to me so I don't mess it up. But this year, there was a study done by ConvertKit for the state of the creator economy. And they surveyed 2,700 creators, and 63% of them said that they experienced burnout. So over half of full-time creators said that they experienced burnout. So much so that the World Health Organization declared and officially recognized burnout as a syndrome in 2019. Oh, wow. So that became a thing. So, I mean, it's a real thing, you know, and it looks different for everyone. But something that Chris and Bree touched on earlier is when to know when you're reaching your burnout point and not getting there and then saying, hey, I'm burnt out. For me, that looked like feeling overwhelmed. It looked like resentment towards my craft, like something that I used to enjoy doing and wake up excited to do. I was resentful about it. To me, it felt like staying in the bed a little bit longer than I normally do. So I think for you or for the person watching, you have to identify like, what are your triggers or what are the points that lead up to burnout, and then decide that you're going to take some time away before you get to that point.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. You know, if I could hop into, I want to go back to, I love Blair's point about a game plan. And that's how I'm thinking about all of this, is like approaching this with a game plan. And it's something that Bree said earlier about really delineating what parts of her life she wants to share versus which parts she doesn't. And then to Suli's last point about understanding the overwhelm, we're all a bit burned out from the pandemic. We've all gone through a pandemic that's still not over, and no one's come out of this unscathed. And I think, you know, you had the awareness, Suli, to understand and to be able to say, you know, I'm feeling overwhelmed here. But I think what goes along with that is to have a team of trusted people who can really be honest with us and say, you know what, I've noticed that you're getting out of bed at noon every day, or I noticed that you're not sleeping, or I noticed that you're doing something else to try and cope here. Let's talk about this. And so I think that goes in along with this as well as part of the game plan, is having trusted people in your life who can be real with you and care about your mental health more so than deals or anything else.
And I want to share a pearl of wisdom from my mentor, Feminista Jones. We just did a lesson together on tone policing. But way back in 2014, when she retweeted one of my posts and I started to get a little bit viral, not the same way I did in 2020, but she said, hey sis, do you really want to be doing this? I was like, what? Like the whole public figure life? And I was like, I guess so. And she's like, well, you need to know so, because you're kind of at this point where you can turn around and say, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Because after you're at a certain level, I mean, like, look at like Andre 3000, like he was at the, you know, peak of his game. He even made a cartoon about how he kind of took a step back from the limelight. But looking at it, and she said, if you don't love what you do and what you do becomes your job and you become your job and you start to resent your job and you are your job, you will start to resent yourself. And that stays with me all the time. So I never try to do anything that, okay, I'm going to start doing this. Do I absolutely love it, or do I not want to participate? And if I don't love it, then I'm going to pivot, because, you know, worst thing, it's like kind of what, be careful what you wish for. Say you get stuck doing something you hate, but it's so successful, it pays all your bills. You better love it. And so it's having that kind of like foresight. And I think that's why when I went viral in 2020, I was able to be like, I genuinely love this. I'm so happy I'm doing this. And there were a lot of people who were kind of like, I don't know if I like this. And so you don't want to find yourself unprepared. So I think preparation part of that game plan too.
Wow. That was great, wise words to share.
Absolutely.
Love those. My next question for you all was going to be, how do you keep your personal life personal? But we've really kind of weaved that in so far with building your community and setting boundaries. So I'd like to move on to this very important question, which is, how does one navigate parasocial relationships online, especially with a younger social media audience? Blair, you're like, no.
I'll go really, really quickly. During 2020 and 2021, I started a pen pal program, like a letter writing program, because I noticed, like, the increased stats around loneliness and burnout were really daunting. And so I was like, okay, let me try to be a little sunshiny part of the internet. And it started to get a little out of hand when I would like post a story and I'd be like, hey, Smarties. And somebody would message me back, you're the only person that says hello to me every day. And it's so interesting because, like, how beautiful, how sweet. But simultaneously, I didn't realize that when one person's watching my video, that they really feel I'm talking directly to them. And you also see this when people start to feel slighted. I'm an educator, so when I educate about things, sometimes somebody will say, you completely erased my experience. And it's like, okay, so how do we, handle that? And that's something that's very valid to move forward on. And then you have the other side of it where you'll have somebody who posted something, you don't know who they are, they posted it in the ether, you say something, and they feel really called out or seen. I had this recently in London where there's this cute little poster in this very high traffic, lots of foot traffic place that said, please smile at strangers. And I posted on my story. And one of my Smarties was like, wow, I can't believe that Blair was where I was. Like, and it was like a little angsty and a little bizarre. And I was like, okay, so what do we do about that? But because both of my parents are social workers, they have a lot of those parasocial relationships with a lot of their clients. And being in mental health, I think it's something that a lot of like therapists experience of, you have a therapist who you pay to listen to you all the time. It's very common for clients to then fall in love with that person because it's like the ideal relationship and there's that parasocial element. And so I think that intermittently, as I talk about things, it's those reminders of like when I'm doing an ad break, like, hey, this is what's happening. What's the narrative and the story that I'm telling? Because some people are just going to be reading the book, of your Instagram story, of your posts one-to-one, and are going to be feel very seen and heard. But reminding those people, like, I'm so glad you feel at home and safe here. But especially for a younger audience, especially because, as an LGBTQ plus person, I'm bisexual, I'll have young people who are just coming out and I want to respect them. I want to like hold that sacred. But there's a young person named Yusuf who messaged me and was like, Blair, I love you so much. Will you sign me a copy of your book? And I could kind of like tell like, oh, this is a younger person. I was like, I'd love to. Is there an adult at your school or in your family that I could talk to? And then they could email me at this address. And then I would love to send it to your school instead of your home. So that way I can be that person to stop that pattern so that some unscrupulous, YouTuber or whatever, as we've seen previously, especially with these, 20 something, 30 something year old men, start grooming these kids towards bad, and predatory behaviors. So being that person that interrupts it. So when I'm writing letters to people, hey, before you give out your address and you're a younger Smartie, please, ask for permission from your family because it's about keeping you safe and normalizing those behaviors. And it was so funny because I saw other influencers being like, Blair, stop asking for that because I'm going to have to start asking for it. But I'm like, good. Like, no, it's a smart thing to do. You creep, like, what the heck? And so really normalizing those behaviors because I've been on the other side of it. I was one of those kids that was on AOL chat rooms with all types of predators on MySpace.
Yeah.
At a time when my parents didn't really know to go and check chat logs or like have all those different monitoring, mechanisms. So it was, sorry, 1 second. So it was quite difficult to process. And so I'm always trying to be cognizant of those things, especially for a younger audience. Luckily, a lot of social media has built in those practices and I consult with like Meta and different platforms like that to make that more normalized. But it's really difficult because I'm so glad I feel special to these folks, but simultaneously I'm a stranger and they need to like have protections against stranger danger.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't put it better, but I think Blair really highlighted like how dangerous it is. And it feels very high stakes and dangerous a lot of the time. I feel like navigating parasocial relationships is something that I've struggled with the most when it comes to social media, especially because and Brendan can really, being on like kids shows, your following comes from the audience of those shows and your friends who are also on those shows. And, and so one, it makes me more cautious of what I share and who I am, because I'm like, I feel like I am an example for these children and I don't want to be. And, you know, I don't want to raise anybody's children, but ultimately, like, they are consuming my content. Like, I am supposed to be an example and a role model. And that puts a lot of pressure on me. But also what feels dangerous is like, exactly what Blair was saying, how they feel this very close connection, like you are the only person who has said hello to me. And while it's very flattering and it, you know, it makes you really feel like you're part of something important, it also feels very high stakes, because then you're like, what happens when I don't say hello to you tomorrow? Like, what will you do? Like, what does that mean? Like, what does that look like? And it can just feel very daunting and very dangerous. And sometimes it can feel like you have someone's safety and life in your hands. And it's like, I also get it. I wasn't on MySpace, but like growing up, I like wrote fan mail. I thought that me and Jennifer Lawrence were like this. Like, I thought that was my best friend. And so I get where they're coming from, because that was me once, but being on the other side of it, it's kind of like, I don't know how to approach this, because I want to wish you a happy birthday. But then what happens when I don't answer the other 12 DMs that I'm sent after? So I'm still kind of navigating what boundaries look like, and still kind of trying to accept that it isn't entirely my responsibility to talk to every individual personally. And, you know, it's not my job at the end of the day, but still trying to maintain my inner peace and like, is everyone okay? Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Okay, I love that. Really quickly, I did want to touch on one thing, because I know we do have an audience of a lot of young performers. What tips would you all have for their parents on running their accounts and how they can keep their kids protected in this crazy digital space?
I will keep this smarter and second short. The first thing I think is so essential is that when you're monitoring, it's not a punishment, it's not a threat, it's not a weapon. It is a community conversation. So that way, if something does go awry, or they see an image that frightens them, or somebody who frightens them, they don't feel like they're in trouble. I think that my parents did their best to approach this with me, but I was really believing that the punishment that these predators would be experiencing was something that I would also be punished for, because I felt weird. I felt wrong. I felt my boundaries I felt violated. And that same feeling of violation can kind of squirm that same way in your stomach as that feeling of guilt and shame of having done something wrong. So it's an open conversation. It's, I'm here with you. I love you. I'm protecting you, not in a paternalistic way, but in a very like camaraderie, as equals as much as possible, and in this friendship way that is unconditional. And if something does go wrong, for that parent to take that concern of wanting to be like, oh my gosh, how horrible, because that reaction, just like when a kid falls, you don't want to be like, oh my gosh, are you okay? But taking a step, okay, and so how are you feeling? That was scary. That was uncomfortable. All right, so let's do this together. How can I keep you safe? Do you want to take a step back? And making it that open dialogue instead of that scary kind of punishment place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to piggyback on that, I think with that open dialogue, it's really important for the parent to talk to the child about some of the things that they're seeing and why, their reasons for doing what they're doing, to help the child develop boundaries on their own. Like, and maybe the parent doesn't need to go into the complete details about some of the unnecessary overtures, but, you know, someone said a harsh thing about you, or someone said a harsh comment, and I'm going to delete that because I don't want you to be subject to that. And that's not something that we value. I don't want people to interact with you like that. And I want to teach you that you don't have to accept that type of behavior from people as well. So these are the steps that we're going to do to omit that. And again, I think it might have been Shane who said that about, is this fun? You know, let's try, and I understand that this is work and this is a business, but there has to be an element of like, okay, I'm enjoying this, and to really still monitor how your kids are doing with social media, and to again look at the purpose for it, so that it doesn't go off into, this is cumbersome, this is burdensome, or I become fearful of navigating this following.
Chris, I completely agree. And I just think that as a parent, being that social media is here and it's not going anywhere, I think that it's super helpful to just equip yourself and educate yourself on the platforms that you're allowing your children to be on. Kiana, the founder of AIC, Kiana and I were just speaking about the fact that on Twitter, you're allowed to see certain images and videos that you can't even see on regular websites that are banned because they're inappropriate. But on Twitter, anything kind of goes, right? So you want to regulate what your child is on, and then just educate yourself on each platform. Like how far does every platform go? I know on YouTube specifically, there's this feature where it's like hide potentially harmful comments for your review. So you can receive a comment from someone, and before it goes public, you can review it and then approve it or deny it. So for me, I think as a parent, education is important, not only for your child, but for yourself, because this is the new age that we're living in. And so we have to get informed.
And if I may, I would love to approach this question from a little bit of a different angle, just from the business side of things. It's amazing how many folks reach out to us on social, right? Whether we have a few hundred followers or subscribers or 100 million. And if you're a parent helping your child navigate, I think it's really helpful to educate everyone involved in what to agree to. And where are you allowing your name and likeness to migrate? And what terms, and are you accepting a free product in exchange for a promotion, and is it in writing, or can they just take your content and do whatever they want with it and exploit it however you want? Like, where are you protected in that space? Because that could be really, really stressful, especially as you are navigating into other waters, right, in this industry. So protect yourself, get educated, reach out to SAG-AFTRA if you need. We're here. That's my plug.
Absolutely. So the next question that I had was, how do you deal with comparison on social media? Because comparing yourself to people in life is difficult, but especially when we see on social media these filtered versions of people, the highlight reel. That's the best way to say it. We see these highlight reel version of people. So how do you deal with the comparison that comes along with that? And how also can that carry itself outside of a digital space? And how do you handle that as well?
I can go ahead on this one. For me, learning to stop comparing myself to others really came from meeting someone in real life that I had followed for a very long time, and I had put on a pedestal unintentionally, but like subconsciously, who I had put on a pedestal. And then I met them and I knew them as a person and as a human such as myself. And I really got to see that it, much like how I project myself on social media, it's really only a fraction. And it can feel like no matter how many times people tell you, like, this is just a highlight reel, like, not all of this is real. And this isn't, real life. And it's not showing, it's very hard to believe. And so I'm a person who has to learn things the hard way. And I need to experience something myself to learn it. And so I think coming face to face with this person that I had thought was invincible, and learning that they're not, and we're all just people, was really helpful to my experience. And it even, answering your next question, it enters my space, and I don't know if it's a teenage thing or a social media thing, but even with like growing up in this industry, the friends I made, it really impacted my social circle. There were some people in my life who, if I didn't have anything to offer them, if I didn't have a big enough of a following, they would not speak to me and they would not give me the time of day. And so you can feel not worthy. It can really take a toll on your self-worth. But I think it's just coming back to the fact that, chances are your experience is parallel to someone else's, which means that how you carry yourself on social media is probably also how the next person is carrying themselves on social media, which is that not everything is there. So, yeah.
Brianna, that was so good. That was so good. Only because I can attest to, you meet people in real life and you're like, oh, okay. Or like, oh, this feels different, but okay, you know? So I think that having that in real life interaction definitely makes a difference. And, you know, actually going to events or going to whatever it is where you can meet people in person definitely kills the comparison. There's also this new feature on Instagram that I love so much. I don't know if other people use it, but it's the favorites feature. So you can like favorite your favorite accounts, and then you can switch from like a following tab to favorites, and your feed becomes just all your favorite people. So I use that to just scroll through all my inspo accounts when I don't want to deal with the sensory overload of like everything that's going on. And I should be posting twice a day, every single day. And I just look at people that are inspiring, that are creative, and remind me of why I want to do things. So I think that that's been really helpful for comparison, for killing comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up with a few siblings and my brother being the all-star, I was like, you know, always in its shadow. My parents were always trying to instill in me, don't compare, don't compare, don't compare. And I think that it's, you know, it's easier to rely on those things when times are good. But when times are tough, like this past summer, where, you know, a lot of influencer campaigns, like there was not as many pride campaigns, there was not as many, you know, like, social good campaigns. And I had to learn kind of how to pivot from this like social activist-y influencer into a lifestyle-y influencer. Cause like as the times were changing and like, you know, really honing that craft and taking that seriously and respecting the game, like, then, oh my gosh, it became impossible not to compare myself to people because I'm looking at this person. Well, this person has more gigs than me and I have higher engagement than her. And this person has more followers than me. And it sucks. And I think that one of the things that I always encourage my, students to do is not to police our own inner thoughts, but to instead interrogate where they came from and why they're there. So instead of, you know, being like, well, how dare I think that? It's more of a, okay, why am I thinking that? It's because I'm vulnerable. It's because I'm trying to make sure I get my next check. So how about instead of me hating, I can actually get in touch and be like, hey, can we strategize together? Like, what kind of equipment are you using? What's your schedule like? How many are you filming a day? So that I can try to get on your level instead of trying to bring you down and, you know, me not coming up anywhere either. And also making sure that you're instilling that sense of mentorship in other people. But I'll just give you a quick example of like when you meet people who are really lovely and genuine, like that's how I met Brandon. We were at some premiere and you were in line behind us and I was like, what's up, fam? You were like, how you doing? And we just started talking and that was so lovely, but it's not always the case. You know, I think like Brianna said, like I've met people or people have met me, totally ripped me off because I give nerdy energy all the time. Like I feel like I'm constantly dressed like Miss Frizzle. Like you should have seen me today when we were at this little Area 51 little exhibit. Like I'm living my best life. It's great. But there was a time, and it depends on the day, like how confident I feel in myself. I'm always more confident when I'm dressing in the closet than when I go outside. But anyway, so I give off dirty energy and I'll meet people and they'll totally brush me off. I was at an event. I was going to be on a panel and I was just, you know, meeting people being like, hey, it's nice to meet you. I'm very friendly. And the person asked me if I was on the show that the panel was for. And before I could say, no, I'm not, and finish that sentence, she completely walked away. Then, of course, I'm on the panel. I do a good job. And then she comes up and be like, it was so great meeting you earlier. Can I get your information? And I was just like, oh my God, like people really tell on themselves. So that was somebody who wasn't interested in a genuine connection with me. And, you know, praise God that I know that from the jump. So I'm not trying to, you know, get caught up with somebody who's clearly just a user, a climber, a clout chaser. And so it sucks. Sometimes I'll get DMs after an event for somebody to be like, oh, I didn't realize you had that many followers, that you were verified. And it's like, you shouldn't have to realize that somebody's a person for you to treat them like a person or that they're valuable to you. But I really am grateful for when those people tell on themselves, because you don't need them in your space. You don't need them in your circle. You don't need that energy. It sucks that people are like that, but they are. And I wish them well and far away from me.
Loved that. Chris, I want to know, have you seen, you know, an uptick in this specific issue with young performers? Is there a lot of comparison issues that you deal with at looking ahead? Have young performers come to you about this?
Completely, all the time. And I feel like it's rampant, and not just young performers, but society in general. But specifically speaking about young performers, it just, there's this sense of that I'm not enough. And that's something I want to say to everybody listening, like you are enough. There is nothing that you need to do to alter yourself to be enough. You are enough right now. And to take that a step further, I want you to, everybody listening, to think about a place where you feel enough. Maybe this is in your room, maybe this is with your parent, maybe this is at a park. Like, where can you access that feeling of being enough? And I want you to keep that in your mind, because my hope is that the older you get, the more you can add to that list of places so that you don't have to go searching for this. But to your question, Jillian, yes, that's very rampant. And like, I get it. It's the harm reduction model. I think, Blair, you might have mentioned harm reduction earlier, and I think that's exactly it. Like, social media is not all bad. There's positive things about it, but how do we make it work for us? How do we use it in a way that is supportive of us and our pursuits? And oftentimes what I'll hear from kids is issues about body image, issues that I don't look this way, or, this person looks like this and they have 2 million followers and I only have 2,000 followers. And I understand a lot of times we all get tunnel vision with different things in our lives. With that, I encourage people to kind of step out of that to gain perspective. So I would love if everybody can like spend more time in nature, go spend time next to a mountain or the ocean, to realize that like this is a part of life, but this is not your entire life. And so also, if kids are feeling this sense of comparison, I would say talk to your parents if you have a relationship with your parents where you can go into that with, or talk to another trusted adult. Like with Looking Ahead, we have several social workers on staff, myself included. We have a team of adults who care and will listen and will just guide you through this process, because it's a lot. It's a lot, but we just want people to know that us at Looking Ahead and the entertainment community fund at large are here to really support that journey.
And I want to say this, I'm a very religious person. I'm Muslim, but I grew up Christian. And when I was talking about this with my dad, he said, well, Jesus only had 12 followers and look at all the change he made. And so that always keeps me really, having that sense of warmth, because if you imagine 2,000 people, that's an arena. 100 people liked your post. If they were in that room with you right now, that's a crowd, And so think about that relatively. And sometimes we need to think about our own, the power in our insignificance, in the sense of like looking at the scope of time, looking up at the sky and how many planets have life, and like, and not a way to diminish or to demean ourselves, but to really give ourselves that perspective. But I love that so much, and I always hold on to it. Jesus only had 12.
Yeah.
Claire, I also love that. I've heard that before, and that's really, really encouraging. I also say, like, just for people to know that there is enough space for everyone. Like, I know sometimes it feels like that's not the case, but in the creator space, I genuinely love the fact that, you can show up as who you are. That's the point of this space, right? So why not be you? Why would you want to be someone else? And I know personally for me, when I find myself being like overly critical or just in my head a lot, I stop myself by saying, would you talk to your best friend like that? Would you talk to your mom like that? Would you talk to somebody you love like that? No. So why are you talking to yourself like that? So it's just kind of like bringing yourself back to with an approach of love, as opposed to being just overly critical, when in reality, there are things in this world that are so much bigger than us, like Blair was touching on earlier. And I think that helps center me personally.
All y'all gonna make me cry. Chris over here with his find your place. And I'm like, okay, I got my place.
I just think it's okay. I wanted to add one more comment. Exactly what Suli was saying. I mean, it just took a long time for me to realize that numbers are not a reflection of your worth. And like, I know people that are extremely talented and they aren't even on social media. And I'm like, that doesn't take away from you as a human or as an artist. Like, they're still creating amazing work. And them not being present on social media does not mean that they are any less. So
I actually want to piggyback on all this, because we received a question from somebody in the audience, and I think this is the perfect time to ask it. They said, thank you all for sharing. One, what would you tell creatives that have not hit the viral moment or gained the large community?
So I darn near gave up. I didn't know if we could cuss, so I, said darn instead. But anyway, yeah, I was really close to completely giving up. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was supposed to have my busiest year ever. My book came out, Making Our Way Home. My book about the Great Migration came out in February. I did 24 cities in 28 days. And then I felt really bad about potentially having spread a bunch of COVID because I didn't even know it existed yet, because most of us didn't, unless you were in like microbiology or, what have you. But I was, I felt like this big, like, oh, I have everything. I was going to do, panels in Cannes for the Creative Festival. And then all of a sudden I was just stuck there with me and my woes. And I was like, okay. And I got really into Animal Crossing and I completely disassociated and it was not healthy. I just basically played Animal Crossing, spent all my rent money, and then I was totally broke. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get my teaching credential. I'm going to, go back into the workforce. I'm going to kind of give up on doing this, career, which is like, me being my own career. But then I decided to really re-strategize. Okay, well, things aren't going to open up back in October 2020. So how am I going to keep pressing go and re-strategizing and thinking about things differently? So it's whatever you're doing. Like, there's all these tools we have, whether it's Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Be Real, which I don't understand. Yeah, I'm asking you to explain that to me later, Brandon. No, you have to understand that you're Gen Z. No, anyway,
So weird.
it's like we have all this stuff. And so what is the unique value that you have, Suli and Brianna were talking about, like just being you and putting that into that tool. And so for me, when Reels came out, I'm not going to do a makeup routine or a outfit change thing or, a dance, because I don't want to embarrass myself. But what I can do is spit some fun facts really fast. I'm too happy to be a rapper, I was told in New York, but I can spit some facts. I have bars, about education. We can do both of those things, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, it was like one of those things where, okay, how can I take my talent and my interest and what brings me joy, like Shane was saying, and then putting that into this tool. And that created Smarter in Seconds. And I've gotten over 50 million views on that. I just did a recent lesson that almost get a million views on Columbus and colonization. And so it's like not changing yourself for the platform, but changing the platform to work for you. And so really being tenacious with that and not waiting for that viral moment, but remembering that sometimes you have something to offer, but the audience isn't there. So how can you reach that audience? Is it writing op-eds? Is it going on podcasts? Apparently LinkedIn is a huge thing. You can be a LinkedIn influencer. Like there is really an audience for everybody. And if you don't think so, think about how many stores are in New York City and all these stores are staying open. And, mob money aside, the stores that are staying open is because there's somebody who's patronizing them. There's somebody who's shopping there. You might never go to that one place, but somebody else, that's like their favorite spot, whether it's a restaurant, whatever it is. And so if that place can stay open in the busiest city in the world, then somebody is there for you, just statistically, because there are billions of people. Even if you're 1 in a million, that's still a couple people, because 1 in a million in a world full of 7 billion, that's so many people. So just stay encouraged and be tenacious and be hungry and be excited and collaborate. My other mentor, Kelly B, says, I don't have time to babysit my old ideas. So don't be afraid of people stealing your idea. Trust the fact that you have a unique thing to offer and that you can be tenacious and you can share and you can grow, because like Suli was saying, there's enough room for all of us. And it's time for us to, squat up, bring that together, because it's only lonely at the top if you don't bring people with you.
Love that.
All right.
I love that. But I would also say, like, don't, easier said than done, obviously, but don't focus so much on the viral moment, because what happens is when you catch the viral moment, you're just going to be chasing the next viral moment. And then at one point, are you going to be happy and loving what you do? As opposed to continuously create content that you love, evoke emotion out of people, give people something to laugh at, something to be informed about, something to think twice about. And when they share that information and when they feel like they're feeling something, then you'll find yourself in that viral moment because you evoke something out of somebody. But I think chasing viral is just, you're going to dig yourself a quick hole. I know that we want the big numbers, we want the huge platform, but you also want to love what you do and you want to be happy on that platform.
And I just want to jump in exactly what Suli and Blair said. I hit my viral moment, and then from that day forward, I was like, okay, when is the next time? And I was changing myself for the platform because of this one specific video. I was like, I have to look exactly like I do in that video. I have to be doing exactly what I was doing in that video. And then my content just became one, very repetitive, but also it wasn't who I was anymore. And when I had created that video, it was just for fun, and I wasn't expecting it to go anywhere, and I wasn't expecting anyone to see it, and I just did it for the sake of doing it. And so I think, but from that video forward, everything was like very intentional, and it was very inauthentic, and it was, and so yeah, I think it is really about just having fun and creating the content that you want to and is true to you, and like the audience will follow, rather than, trying to fit yourself into this box for, something that like could never happen again. Like, though I may never reach that many views again. But at least I would be creating content that made me happy. And was fulfilling me, even if it never reached that benchmark ever again. And that's okay, because I'm happy.
Shane, I wonder what your perspective is on this, because I know that you work with influencers in SAG-AFTRA, and recently SAG-AFTRA has, created this contract for influencers to protect influencers, and you're dealing with people too who may not necessarily be SAG-AFTRA actors, but they are now SAG-AFTRA influencers. And I'm wondering what you see in this.
Yes, it's funny. Just going back to the last question, I'll just add to that before we delve into this a little bit more. I was talking to an influencer this morning, actually, and she was like, how do I get to that viral moment? Exactly what we're discussing. And I was like, first of all, I don't know. I'm not an influencer, but if I had one piece of advice, create content that you would enjoy watching. Something that's true to you that will put a smile on your face, and maybe it'll put a smile on someone else's face. And that's, if you do that, if you achieve that at the end of the day, I think you should feel good about yourself, because you made the world a little bit brighter. Like Blair was saying, maybe a little less sucky, right? But going back to the influencer agreement, one thing that we really try to do is, as everyone's trying to navigate all of this, we're trying to provide a resource to help people get from place to place in their careers in a healthy and safe way. So, as we work and engage with brands, we make sure that, it's done in a way that's not going to hurt them in the future, and it's going to be sustainable, and they're going to be able to access health insurance, mental health resources, retirement, all of those things that really can relax some of the stress of being a creator, and then you can focus on your craft. And that is so exciting to be able to provide for this community. So if anyone needs to reach out, influencer@sagaftra.org. Yes. I know, Blair, we're going to talk. I can tell.
You had me at health insurance.
Literally, that was literally just going to come out of my mouth. But also, I heard you mentioning some things about allowing or helping influencers navigate from place to place in a healthy way. If you guys visit the American Influencer Council website, there's a lot of great resources on there too. We do a lot of programming, lunch and learn. There's like mentorship opportunities. So I really recommend checking out the website and seeing how you can get plugged in and involved, so that you feel like you're a part of a community and have resources to work on your craft and solely focus on that and get better at that.
That's great. That really does go back to that last question from our audience member of, what do you do when you haven't reached that viral moment? It's nice to know that there's places like the American Influencer Council who will help you with your brand and help you create what you want to be presented to the world as.
I mean, honestly, it's great. Before being a member, I went to some of the programs, and then I just did some research on the council, and I was just like, I need to be a part of this. Like, what you guys are doing is so great, especially for an industry like ours that is developing really fast, but it's also really new. It's just nice to have people who are in your corner. Like, I can call Kiana, text Kiana, ask her questions, and she's like, let's get on the call real quick. And you don't see that a lot in this space. We record by ourselves. We do our hair, our makeup, or whatever it is that we do on our own. We press record, we edit, we do all these things by ourselves. So it's nice to know that there's a community of people that want to see you win and that are here for you.
Absolutely. Now, really quickly, with the last little bit of time we have left, I wanted to open the floor to anyone in the audience that had questions. Please just go ahead and type them in the chat. If you oh yeah, please just go ahead and type them in the chat. If you have anything that you wanted to ask our great panel, please go ahead and let us know. But really quick, while everyone is thinking of questions, what is just one thing, one takeaway that you would want everyone to gather from this last hour and about 15 minutes that we've had together?
I'll just say quickly that I think that this has changed, the industry has changed so much. Being a child actor in the early 2000s, I felt like there was lack of support. Like, I didn't feel like there was as much accountability, especially for like on-set teachers and stuff. And having worked with so many people like Christy Carlson Romano and Allison Stoner, and even folks who I didn't work with, but like just there's so many people, like just seeing so many folks who just felt unsupported and felt really quite traumatized from their experience being an actor, and like having the protection financially from SAG-AFTRA, but seeing the step go further with looking ahead, like it's really exciting to see, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. I'm going to be pitching stuff soon. I'm actually going to be doing some voiceover stuff, so I'll be a SAG member quite soon, and I'm very excited about that. But just seeing the support and the mentorship networks is so key, because I think that for a long time, Hollywood looked at the trajectory of a child actor as an inevitability. And I think that this is a real demonstration that there's enough, that there's been too many people who have slipped through the cracks or who have been, by the wayside. And so how do we become a community? And I'm really encouraged by seeing this work. So Chris in particular, and Brandon, thank you so much for connecting me with everybody. But this is just so heartwarming and exciting to see.
Yes, 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 absolutely.
I wanted to add what I took from our conversation just by listening to the other panelists is like, yes, this is a business and it is a job, but it's also a passion, and it can be fun if you let it be fun. And there are so many ways that you could make it fun for yourself. There are so many resources now. And there are so many people, the community is so much larger than you think it is. And there's just so many ways to connect and to learn. So yeah.
Lovely.
I completely agree. I'm so grateful to be in this space, and I had no idea that it was going to turn into what it is today, but I'm grateful. One thing that I would like to share with creators and with talent is to not forget the business side of being a creator, being a talent. I know that sometimes we focus on being creative, and that's great, but also make sure that you are not undercharging, and make sure that you're valuing yourself, and make sure that, like every business, you have missions that you stand by that are going to keep you grounded when you have opportunities and you're not sure if they align with your brand. Like, I think all of that is very important, because it'll help you navigate the space in a more fluid and solid way.
Okay, I'll go. Last but not least, or no, I'm not last. Chris is going to close us out. I have to first and foremost say how inspiring I feel like this conversation has been for myself. So I hope to other people watching, you'll get something from it. But what I would give as a piece of advice is to reach out, to this community that's much larger than I think everyone kind of thinks of, and you will find your team, your community, who want to cheerlead you and want the best for you and will help you navigate. And, organizations like the American Influencer Council, Looking Ahead, and the Entertainment Community Fund, SAG-AFTRA, like, we have your backs. We want everyone to succeed, and there is room for everyone to get to where they want to go. So you can do it. Just be joyful in the process, and it will come.
I mean, I took so many things from the panelists. Just, you all blew my mind with your wisdom. And to second Shane's point, there are a lot of structures in place to really offer support to the people assembled on this call. So we want you to know, again, this is the wild, wild west. Shane, that was a perfect description, but there are people who really want to support your well-being. So please tap into these resources. And then lastly, just prioritize your mental health and wellness. Let that be at the forefront of everything you do. No is a complete sentence. It is okay to say no, and boundaries are healthy. Okay. So thank you for being here tonight.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone.
This has been amazing. I'm so
Absolutely.
floored by everybody here. It's just been such a great talk, and you know, Brandon and I have had such fun putting these together with looking ahead, and it's really a joy to have all of you share your wisdom with all of the people who tuned in and all the people who are going to watch this later. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate you guys coming on here and speaking and telling us all your secrets.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. This has been, I couldn't have asked for it to be better. This has been lovely.